Welcome to the Private Practice Journeys podcast, where mental health professionals learn about the nuts and bolts of private practice by listening to the journeys of 4 therapists that have taken the plunge into private practice. And here's your host, Chris Quarto.
Hey everyone, this is Chris Quarto. Welcome back to Private Practice Journeys. Well, this is the last of our special episodes in which I pair up a therapist who I've been interviewing since January, in this case Debby Simmons, with an expert in private practice development, Jeff Zimmerman of the Practice Institute. And I think you'll like this. This has been a really great part of the Private Practice Journeys podcast series because I think it's not only a way for our therapists to learn what they can do to take their practices to the next level, but also for you to learn as well, because some of you like Debbie, might want to start a group private practice. So listen in to this and see what you think. Hey everyone, welcome again to Private Practice Journeys. This is Chris Quarto. Well, this is our last of special episodes where I invite an expert to come on to talk to one of our 4 therapists. And today we have Jeff Zimmerman joining us, who's a licensed psychologist in New York, and he's the founding partner of the Practice Institute. And we paired him up with Debby Simmons today. And Jeff and Debbie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Hi, Chris.
Well, listen, I wanted to start off with you, Jeff, just to find out a little bit more about you and find out about your background and what you've done in the field, and also to talk a little bit about the Practice Institute. So tell us about your story, Jeff.
Sure. Well, thank you, Chris. I became licensed way back in 1981 and worked at a community hospital and had a small private practice at the time.
Okay.
In 85, I left that practice, and a short time later, a colleague and I formed a group practice. There was 2 of us. We were in Connecticut, and I was up in Hartford, and he was in New Haven. We each had 2 offices, so immediately we had a 4-site private practice, group practice. Huh. And our thinking was that we were going to have a yours and mine and an ours. We actually had 3 bank accounts back then. And the thought was that if things were slow in Hartford, I could run to New Haven, and if things were slow in New Haven, he could run to Hartford.
Sure.
And, we had the common expenses and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Over the next 15 years, we grew to 20 clinicians and 7 offices.
Wow.
We had an interdisciplinary group practice back then. And in 2000, there were 5 principals, and we then had an amicable divorce as we had a difference in philosophy about managed care in or being out of managed care. So 3 partners, the New Haven group kind of went their way, and the Hartford group went their way. I was part of the Hartford group at that point. And about 7 years later, I then decided to leave the practice that I formed and go back into solo practice.
Okay.
So I've completed kind of the Zen circle here. I was doing about 15 hours of management a week, and that was getting old. And decided I really wanted to not be doing so much administration and wanted to do the work I loved.
Sure.
I also formed, as you mentioned, thank you, the Practice Institute, which is a consulting organization and designed to help people build thriving practices, not just for psychologists, but for mental health professionals of all types. And that's at thepracticeinstitute.com. And we have a number of offerings on our website for our members. We also have weekly Q&A sessions where people can call in for virtually anything related to practice, business of practice, clinical, ethical issues, risk management, which we often will refer them for serious things, to the risk management company as well, and marketing. We have a special one on marketing, and our members can avail themselves of those services and can also get individual one-on-one consultation as well with regard to building their practices. When we have those Q&A calls open to the public, we get about 200 people register for each one, and when we do them just as the Practice Institute, there's maybe 1 to 4 people on a call.
Uh-huh.
That's by design to give the callers plenty of attention as
Sure.
best as we can. So my focus has always been on private practice since the day I got licensed, pretty much. And I'm very excited about talking with Debbie and also about passing the word on and giving people hope and encouragement. I speak to graduate students and they say we're still getting told that practice is dead. Well, that's what I was told in 1980. Here we still are.
That's right. Still a thriving profession.
It's not quite dead. Sometimes we have to be creative in how to make it work. It's hard to do managed care when you're getting the fees that I was getting in 1981, and those are today's fees all these years later. But it's certainly not dead, and there's lots of ways of doing good work, high quality work, and making a living as well.
Well, Jeff, I do want to make mention of something, because the first I had heard about you, somehow I came across the Practice Institute website, and I came across a book that you had co-authored. I don't remember the title, but it was on financial management. And maybe you could just say a little bit about that as well.
So that's a primer of sorts. It's a very thin book on financial management and practice. You can find it online, or you can find it at TPI Shop. It was written with an accountant who I've known for forever, it feels like. Mm-hmm. And she and I co-authored the book so that people would get some of the basics. You go into the bank and they say, and you're looking for a business loan. What are some of the things you need to be thinking about? How should you be setting up your bookkeeping? How should you be running your practice from a financial standpoint? So we tackle many, many elements. And one of the things that is particularly important that we put in the book is a chapter on what I call dashboards, which is how to really look at the metrics around your practice. Mm-hmm. People think, well, I don't like finance, I don't like math, I don't like economics. Yep. I would have gone to graduate school for that.
Yep.
And they run a practice that they've invested maybe $200,000 worth if you look at your training and your experience as pre- and postgraduate. And you've made this huge investment in your training to make decisions by the seat of your pants, if you pardon me. When really doing the math is basic addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. It doesn't require great facility with higher level math, with economics, with finance, with accounting. It just requires some thoughtful thinking, or even with Excel spreadsheets. My colleagues make fun of me because I do lots of stuff on spreadsheets. But you don't have to be an expert at Excel to do the math. And sometimes what I've seen happen, is people make rather large decisions about their practice. Should I bring on another employee? How should I compensate the employee? And they make these decisions based on gut feelings or based on what other people are doing or what they hear, and not based on the math pertinent to their practice. I've consulted with people who say my employees aren't marketing enough and in their group practice. And when we do the math, it becomes obvious they need to stop marketing, because the way they're structured, they're actually losing money on each client.
Uh-huh.
And they don't realize it. They just know that it's affecting their bottom line. Their bottom line is being affected, but they don't realize it's not because they're not busy enough. It's because of how they're structured. And they need to restructure the practice so that when those cases come in, they're not losing, $5.12 a case, which adds up over the course of a year or more.
And Jeff, what is the title of the book?
The title is Financial Management for Your Mental Health Practice, Key Concepts Made Simple. And it's written by me and, as I said, an accountant. Her name is Diane Libby. And she put in the technical pieces of it that were beyond my skill set, out of my job grade.
Well, Journey followers, I want to encourage you to get this book, because I've read the whole thing cover to cover, and it's a wonderful book. And
thank you.
It's very, very easy to read, short read, and I think that a lot of times people in the mental health profession are just clueless about some of these financial matters, and they're afraid actually of dealing with any financial matters. But Jeff, as you said, it's so critical for them to get a handle on that. And so this book, I think, is probably the best one that I've ever seen relating to these primary financial matters. So I really appreciate you writing that.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to move on now, just before we have Debbie come on to join you. I'd like you to talk a little bit just kind of about your approach in helping, because you'd said at the Practice Institute, one of the things that you do is to help people who want to go into private practice go that route. And I just want to find out, in your dealings with people, what your philosophy or what your approach is in helping them do that.
So one of the things I like to find out first, and I'll be interested in Debbie's answer to this, is really why they're in practice, what their vision for their practice is.
Okay.
Because I think that one of the most important elements here is that we are relatively happy in this work. Mm-hmm. This is really hard work.
Yes.
At times it is life-saving work, literally, and at times it's soul-saving work, literally. Mm-hmm. And it takes a piece of us. There's an old Asian expression that you see in the card stores that says, when a person puts their foot in the river is never the same. Ah. And what they don't show in the card stores is the second half of that old saying, which I happened to discover by accident. And the second half was, comma, and neither is the foot. Ah. That we're not the same doing this hard work.
Right.
This work, we change the people in some way, hopefully positively, that we touch and that we help, but they also change us.
Sure.
And this is really life-changing work. If we're doing work that we're not aligned with, then we're going to be unhappy in the work, and it's going to have a potentially negative impact on us personally in terms of our families, our own personal relationships, that sort of thing. So one of the first things I try to do is make sure that there's some alignment in terms of how the person, why they're in practice, how they're running their practice. Is their practice giving them the satisfaction, whether it's in terms of making changes in the community, in terms of growth, in terms of finances that they're looking for, and then to figure out how to get that alignment so that they are indeed having the practice they want. Mm-hmm. One of the perks of owning your own practice is that you can shape it or try to shape it the way you want it. Mm-hmm. One of the struggles of owning your own practice is that everything comes back to you and your practice
Sure.
partners, your practice with others. You can't just go home at 5 o'clock and say, well, somebody else will worry about that.
Right, exactly.
You're worrying about that. And it's not just about the clinical piece of it. You get a note from your landlord that you missed something in the lease and you didn't realize that now you have a $2,000 bill waiting for you
right.
on what's CAM charges, and you didn't realize that could occur, and now you just got this bill for $2,000, and where am I going to pay that from? Well, your employees all went tonight, and they're not up at 2 o'clock in the morning wondering where you're going to get that $2,000, and is that really true and accurate? Mm-hmm. You're wondering that. So so you have those headaches and those burdens, and the other side of that, though, is really creating the practice you want to have.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. So just kind of getting their vision of where they want this to be, why they want the practice, why they want to be in practice, where they want to go. I think those are good questions. And Debbie, I want to bring you in at this point. If you could just kind of fill Jeff in on where you're at with your practice, tell him a little bit about what you've been doing, and then Jeff, I'm just going to kind of hand it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Thanks. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Jeff. You are an amazing resource, and I want that book. I know it just sounds wonderful, so I will definitely be checking that out. So that was already good information for me.
Thank you.
So, like Chris said, I was in private practice. I'm an educator and a clinician since 1993, and I was teaching high school and stuff way before that, about 10 years before that. I went from a part-time practice and teaching to a full-time practice in about 2003, and then just a year ago, almost a year ago, I went down to a workshop and heard a gentleman speak about a group practice, and I was intrigued, and so I went and spoke with him, and I thought, I like this idea, and I was already had interns, so I kind of already had a group practice, and then I came back and I thought, well, what would be different about my practice and how I work? And I really wanted to take a holistic approach to therapy, and bring in adjunctive kinds of things to therapy, like yoga, meditation, Reiki, things that we could do right in the center instead of referring people to, which we oftentimes do. Mm-hmm. So that's become sort of where our center is Primrose Healing and Wellness. And that's the focus that we take. It's very holistic. When clients call in, they're screened very specifically to find out who's going to be the best therapist match for them. I have about 6 people working for me at this point. And so, yeah, that's kind of where we are. Right? We officially just opened in January. And I'm taking on another third full-time office, probably by September. So we've got, things have been moving fast, which is great. I've already had one therapist leave for medical reasons, and then another one is going to be leaving because her family's going to be moving in August. So we're going to be I've got to get some more people in. So that's sort of where we are right now.
Great. So how can I best help?
A lot of, I've been lucky because I've been running a practice for so many years anyway. So I have a lot of the business, the business piece and everything. I think right now where I'm at is how to bring people in, because I'm bringing people in as independent contractors. And of course, they have to do some of their marketing. Right now, we've been really lucky that everybody that's come in has been, all of my therapists have gotten referrals through me, but that well is going to dry up before long. The other piece is that I'm finding, you talked about managed care, and I was on a lot of the insurance panels, and we're no longer, as a center, we don't take insurance, but a lot of the calls are still coming from the insurance companies. So making that transition has been a little tricky. So just any insights on any of that, really.
So I have to tell you, you have a beautiful looking website.
Thank you.
I'm not stalking you.
That's great. No, I'm thrilled. I'm glad that you looked at it. Thank you.
But it's showing your office space. It's welcoming. It's professional, but welcoming and soothing and calming. At least those are my reactions to even just seeing the slider on your homepage. So it gives me a sense of who you are and who this practice is. And actually, as you were introducing yourself, and speaking about a holistic center, and you can see even on your website under services the wide variety of services that you provide. And I think that is really important, as long as you can maintain the quality and not get too diverse that you kind of lose a sense of what's happening with the other professionals. But short of that, it really gives a sense of how your practice may be different than the other 100 practices that are around you. You're in the San Francisco area, and it's not void of other practices, or I'm sure even other holistic practices.
Right.
And the idea of really setting yourself apart, especially if you're not going to be in managed care, and you're having a fee-for-service practice, part of it is, why would I come to you instead of the other practice that's down the street? And that's both from the client standpoint, but also from your staff standpoint. So if you'd want to spend some time talking about recruitment, I'm happy to answer questions and help address those issues as well, if that's how you'd want to use the time that we have.
Well, what I've done so far, the people that I have are amazing. I mean, the thing that's making us really work is because we are clicking as a group so well. And so even though I know I need to bring a couple people in, the thing that's so important to me is it's not just that it's another therapist come on board, but it's that they're going to really mesh with the values of our group and the personality of our group. Because that's what makes us work. That's why we want to work together. And so, in fact, a lot of the work that we do is like, if I'm seeing a family, then one of the other therapists will see the kids or, something like that. And we do a lot of consulting. So we're not just individual therapists all working in separate offices.
Great.
So, but bringing somebody on who knows, a lot of times when they're coming on, my initial recruitment was actually, I got a lot of people right away, and it was just through Indeed. And I did a lot of interviewing, but people were thinking that they were coming in and just going to be paid a salary and handed clients. And that's not what we're doing. So even what I'm really looking for, even when I'm interviewing people, is who are you going to bring in? What are you going to do in terms of your marketing? We're doing this together, but you've got to do your part. So that's what's making it a little trickier to just, to find the right candidate who is willing to do that kind of work.
Absolutely. And it's so important to be really integrated and not just be a bunch of independent clinicians who do different things. I think
Right.
that can also set you aside when you are a truly integrated group and in lots of different ways. One thing that you mentioned that concerned me was when you said, it's going to dry up in terms of the referrals coming to me. And I would hope that in part of this idea of marketing, it's not just marketing each of us individually, but it's marketing the whole concept of your center.
Yeah. And I think what I said it's going to dry up is because so many of those referrals right now are still from insurance companies. And my goal is I want to get off of all those lists. So that's what I meant by that. So we are doing a lot of marketing for the group.
So would it be helpful to talk about the marketing side of it, or more in terms of how do I get the right fit? Because fit from your employees is crucial.
Yeah. You know what? Just because of the audience that we have, the marketing might be more interesting for them because everybody's going to be doing the marketing, whereas everybody's not going to be hiring employees at this point.
It's your time, whatever you would like.
Well, I'm told the marketing ideas are great. I mean, we've got we have a website. We're definitely getting involved in our community and becoming part of our local community in terms of, I think I'm going to join the Chamber of Commerce and getting to really know our community. Any marketing ideas are welcome.
Okay. So I'm going to give at the risk of another shameless promotion plug, I'll suggest another book to you, which is a book that was actually the Practice Institute has a publishing arm for those listeners who have ideas and are interested in perhaps publishing a book. And the first book that we published was a book about a practice that is completely outside of managed care. Now has I think they have over 30 clinicians that are working in this practice, and that they have just an amazing concept. The book is called "How We Built Our Dream Practice: Innovative Ideas for Building Yours," and it's written by Dave Verhagen, which is Verhaagen, and Frank Gaskill, Gaskill. That book is really not designed to walk you through a marketing plan as much as it tells you their story. And one of the pieces of their story is they have a very, very innovative mental health practice. They have specified 4 core values that spell out the word FIRE, which is fun, innovation, relationships, and excellence. And they have a practice where you walk in, there's a barista serving coffee in their lobby, in their waiting room.
Very nice.
They have a sound studio to produce lots of different broadcasts and concepts. They see a lot of kids on the spectrum. They have Star Wars figures in their hallways or wherever. And they are really about doing great work, having fun at it, and bringing mental health to the world and mental health concepts to the world. One of their the things that they talk about, which wasn't their idea, but they used it, is to be what they call a purple cow. You're driving on the road and you see a brown cow and a black cow, and you go, oh, there's a nice cow. But if you saw a purple cow, you'd stop and pay attention. And they wanted to be that purple cow. And that concept has stuck with me because when I go on to Psychology Today websites, I don't see a lot of purple cows. Those practices may have great people working for them, but when you read the website, it's kind of all the same. Many of them are the same. You already, don't take this the wrong way, you already in some ways are a purple cow, your practice is, and maybe less so in San Francisco than it would be in other parts of the country, but certainly you're different than, hi, I'm Jeff Zimmerman and I treat couples and individuals, anxiety, depression. But the idea is, how do we get the uniqueness of what you do out to the community and to the people who will come to you or refer people to you? And that's something that what Dave and Frank did in their practice is called Southeast Psych. What Southeast Psych did is they went right to the consumer. They bypassed the physicians and all the other typical referral sources you might think of. If you're doing Reiki work, and yoga, maybe the chiropractors and physical therapists and whoever else might, and they bypassed all of them. And basically, what they did is they went to the community and they will speak on anything that they're qualified to speak on at any time, at any place, for any money, including zero. That their idea is to get out there and be visible and be active and make coming to their office not a bad experience, not an unhappy experience, even if it's a difficult experience, but to be warm and friendly, and they are warm and friendly. I've met them and sat with them, and I've been interviewed by them, and it was it took me a minute to see what was happening here, but they were having fun with me, and I had fun with them. So part of it is really thinking about who either touches the patients that your clients that you're looking for, and this is true for your practice as well as for the other listeners out there, who either touches those patients and can refer them that's different than your typical referral source, as well as where can you find them or how can they find you? So,
one of the things that we're doing, even this tomorrow, Saturday, there's a big there's a fair type of thing that's in Central Park here, and we've got a table there, and I've got pictures of Peanuts Lucy, her psychiatrist, free psychiatrist advice, free consultation. They can come talk to us about what therapy is. We've got somebody who's going to be doing Reiki. We've got 2 people who are going to be doing art therapy. So that I think is what we're doing. We're going to be actually touching the community in that way, and I'd love to do more of that kind of stuff. So that's very good that you said that.
Yeah, I think what happens is that many people just go to where they think their colleagues are going to in terms of trying to get referrals. And by doing so, they're not really being creative in how they are connecting to the community. So the community doesn't know them. Maybe the referral sources and they call them sources. We like to call them partners. When you're marketing, that you think about, if you're marketing to somebody other than the direct user, that you're really developing a partnership with them, because it's not just for them to send you work. You're helping the people that they're trying to help. You're helping their clients. And there's this back and forth. If you do a bad job, that reflects on them. By the way, Southeast Psych, if you go to their website, southeastpsych.com, right at the very top of their website, it says Southeast Psych puts psychology into the hands of as many people as possible to enhance their lives.
Ah, that's good.
That's
And
great.
their website looks very different than most other people's websites. So you remember it, even if you don't remember all the stuff that they've got on it.
Yes.
But you remember that this is something different. And they now have 3 offices in
That's
Tennessee, one in Tennessee and 2 in North Carolina.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Jeff, what are some of the primary challenges that in your work, your consultations with people who want to do private practice, or especially in Debbie's case, in group practice, what are some of the primary challenges that they face in that realm?
So 2 immediately come to mind. One is being willing to finance your efforts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know any other business that would expect to market and have a 0 marketing budget.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very true.
Yep.
But from your local bowling alley to a high-end law practice,
Sure.
they would not have a 0 budget
Yeah.
for their marketing.
Yes.
Most mental health practices, when I say, how much did you put aside in your budget, many will say to me, and I don't mean to be pejorative here, what do you mean our budget?
Mm.
So they haven't even created a budget. Money comes in, money goes out, what's left over is ours.
Right.
They haven't created a thoughtful budget from a financial perspective, let alone have a line item in that budget where they've set aside X dollars to spend on marketing each year in a planful, mindful way. So I think that's one piece of it. The other relates to something that Debbie said in terms of her staff marketing. And there are a couple of different approaches to this. One is that everybody should be out there as much as possible. If you're not seeing clients and providing direct service, then you should be outside.
Mm-hmm.
You should be doing something, whether it's outside by writing a blog post, or it's outside by calling out of your office, or it's physically being up and out like your practice is doing this weekend, Debbie. That if you're not doing the work, you should be out there building the relationships that are going to bring you the work. And I firmly believe that it's the relationships that do that. In some cases, and in some practices, not all the staff are going to be competent at that.
Right.
Not all the staff have the appearance, the personality, the verbal skills to go out and do that. So as the owner, you have to decide, certainly if you bring them on, is this somebody, and you want them to market, is this somebody who can well represent our organization? Sometimes
Exactly.
It's hard to tell in an interview. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say exactly. But I also think that, that marketing has so many different components and everyone has different
Right.
skills. You may not be the person who can go out there and socialize, but you might be the person who can write a good article.
Exactly. I can be the person that can write that blog post while you're the one standing at the table all day on Saturday.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And your personality and cheerfulness and welcoming demeanor will be great there. You might struggle for 3 hours to write a blog post that I wrote in a half hour.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can give you, a blog post a week for the rest of the year, taking a half hour a week, and spend the same amount of time forgetting the mathematics of that, for example, that you would spend outside doing X number of presentations. So
Right.
it's there. You also have a right fitting, as we talked about earlier with regard to alignment. You have a right fitting of how do I, as the practice owner, how do I make sure that the things people are doing to represent this practice to the community are aligned with their skill set, so that I'm not asking a terrible public speaker to do an hour talk to the local PTA on kids and stress.
Right.
Jeff, I kind of wonder, because Debbie had brought up the whole notion of independent contractors a little while ago, and I wonder if you've had people who are group practice owners who have had difficulty getting independent contractors to kind of, I'm not sure if buying into the vision or being willing to market the practice, if they've experienced those types of problems, as opposed to somebody who's an employee of that group practice. I wonder if you've encountered that before, and what you would recommend to somebody who has the independent contractors, but yet because they're an independent contractor, they're just not quite as willing to do the marketing stuff.
But I actually, Chris, was doing something I urge people not to do when you were asking me the question, was to guess where I thought you were going with the question, and I guessed wrong.
Okay. Well, if it's more interesting than what I was talking about, go for it.
Oh, it's all the same, but I'm going to take you to an earlier part of the question.
Okay.
Which, should we have independent contractors in the first place?
Okay.
And that piece of that question relates to who decides whether they're an independent contractor or not, and the IRS standards for independent contractors. I won't get into all of the fog about that.
Okay.
But except to say that the IRS is very particular about their definition of independent contractors. You can Google W-2 versus independent contractors IRS, and you'll get the IRS site and probably the main page that talks about that.
Okay.
The idea of independent contractors usually is like the person who might come and paint your home, or a plumber who's doing work in your residence or something like that. They're there for a specified time to do a specified thing, and you don't have much control over how and what they do, what they do. In many clinical practices, the term independent contractor is not being used, as far as the IRS is concerned, correctly. And one thing for the listeners to be careful of, and for you too, Debbie, if you've got independent contractors, is to make sure that you speak with your accountant and that you ask your accountant, are these people likely to pass or fail the IRS tests for independent contractors? If they're independent contractors, they may not, compared to an employee, may not see their time with you as very long-standing. They may see their time with you as just a stepping stone to something else.
Right.
And to get back to your question, Chris, therefore, they may be less invested in the overall success of the practice. They can be an employee, still be paid a percentage of what they bring in, as long as you're careful that you're not fee splitting and stuff like that. But if they're an employee, it's not the same as if they're an outside person that you're sharing a fee with. You're paying them not as a salaried, guaranteed salary, but you're paying them as part of based on their productivity. And that's fine. I mean, lots of people get paid based on their productivity, not a guaranteed salary. But you don't have to pay them that way. You could pay a guaranteed salary. You could pay a fee for service. Every time they see a client, they get a certain dollar amount. There's lots of different ways to structure the compensation, which would be for a different call.
Sure.
But there's lots of different ways to structure the compensation. Part of it is really the commitment of the employee to the organization and their sense of being part of a greater whole. Independent contractors are probably, and I don't want those independent contractors to send me hate mail, but generally, as an independent contractor, you're less committed to the organization than if you're an employee. And as an employee, you're less committed than if you're an owner.
Right. And I guess that answers my question, because I guess this is something important for anybody who wants to transition from solo practice to group practice like Debbie has, for anybody to be aware that that's something that you need to take into consideration, that it's always possible that the investment, as you had referred to it, might not be there at the same level as it might be with an employee. I guess with an employee, there's potentially going to be more buy-in as opposed to an independent contractor who, as you said, may just see this as a stepping stone.
The other question would be, what are the incentives? So, and how is the relationship set up in the first place, regardless of the IRS designation?
I would think, and again, like I said, I have an exceptional group of people, but I think one of the things is their buy-in. Right at the reason why these people contacted me in the first place was because they bought into the holistic approach and
Uh-huh.
of a wellness center. And so that's what they want for themselves as a practitioner. I think the other thing is these people they want to grow their practice, so their incentive to do the marketing or whatever it is, because the more that the center grows, the more that their individual clientele grows.
Right.
And that's more unique to your organization and the way you're structured with lots of different disciplines. If there were 6 of us and we all did family therapy or whatever we all did, there wouldn't necessarily be the kind of referral patterns that go back and forth in your practice. And in some practices, actually, the clinicians are competitors of one another, and they're not working as a team. And you wonder, how can that actually work in the long run when everybody's competing for the same referrals?
Correct.
But the other piece to think about is what other incentives can not only you, Debbie, but the other listeners who have group practices, what other incentives can they offer their employees? So some places will offer a piece of partnership as an incentive. And when you offer partnership, there's differences between compensation, governance, ownership, and with regard to decision making and at what levels. There's lots of different ways to structure that. There are people that will offer bonuses based on productivity, sometimes based on origination of cases, sometimes based on going above and beyond, sometimes not fully based on one concept, but up to the practice owner or owners, that if you've done exceptionally well, here's some extra compensation for you, or here's some extra perks for you, but you have to be careful to make sure you're not violating any employee law or something like that. But the idea is, how do we get everybody as many people as we can to be on the same page of what is good for the practice is good for the individual clinician.
That's wonderful stuff. And we're kind of getting toward the end of our time. But Debbie, I wonder if you have any other questions or any other comments, anything else that you want to bring up to Jeff at this point?
No, I'm thinking, the things that you've said are really good. I think that the thing that I'm finding very valuable with you, Jeff, is the resource that you are, that the books, that your practice. I think that stuff is just, for me personally, that is an awesome resource, and it's going to be for the other listeners, I'm sure.
I can, by the way, if you don't mind, one last shameless plug.
Sure, go ahead.
Jeff Barnett, Steve Wallfish. Steve Wallfish was one of the other founding partners of the Practice Institute. Jeff is, I think he's an assistant dean now at Loyola, also a psychologist. Steve passed away suddenly a little over a year ago, for those of you that knew Steve Wallfish. But the three of us worked on a book that's published by Oxford University Press called The Handbook of Private Practice. And Steve died in the midst of it, but we continued to work on the book, Jeff and I. It has over 800 pages.
Wow.
It's a big book. And half of it has to do, it's all about private practice. Half of it has to do with rather large concepts, large chapters around different concepts related to practice. The other half of it are very small chapters related to different niche practices. So for those listeners that want to get a sense of some overarching concepts, but also want to get a sense of some niche practices and what people are doing, we had the niche practices all written based on the same format, the same outline, so that the reader can get a sense of how practice A is different from practice J and Q and T.
Yeah.
So there are a bunch of niche practices in there, and you can take a look at that if you're interested as well.
Well, we're going to put all of that information in the show notes. So if any of the Journey followers want to get a hold of those books, they can do so easily. So I'll put the links in there in the show notes. And just to kind of summarize for the marketing, what I heard you say in your discussion with Debbie is that focus on what makes you unique. Look at the possibility of using creative approaches, focus on make direct pitches to the community. Maybe not rely solely on your referral sources, but look at making pitches to the community directly as a way of perhaps reducing your dependence on referral sources. Not that there's anything wrong with referral sources, but look at ways of expanding that.
I would, Chris, if I could just take one more moment.
Yep.
I would say look at building relationships with your community rather than pitches.
Okay.
If you're out there and people see you, you say something of value to them, they have a takeaway that they hold. If I go to Debbie's table at this event on this weekend and I learn a yoga pose I didn't know about, and I like the tone and the feelings that are coming from her staff and from Debbie, and I take a brochure with me or something away, I might not call Debbie's practice for 6 months.
Right.
In fact, I might never call Debbie's practice. But when my friend says, my husband is all stressed at work, he's got back pain, neck pain,
right.
He doesn't know what to do, I'm trying to help him, I don't know what to do. The person that was at Debbie's table gives the friend the brochure or says, let me find out who those people were. I forget, but I met them, looks up Debbie, and makes the referral. Not because there was a quote, a pitch, but because there was a sense of safety, of competence, and of the ability to help. And therefore, I'm going to call them. So when Southeast is out doing so many public workshops, so many public presentations, I would suggest to you that they're not making any pitches, that they're just out there relating to their community, being a resource, being of value, so that when people say, who should we call? Well, let's call Southeast.
Right.
And that's who they call, not because there was a connection around a particular idea and concept that I'm going to buy at that moment, which I think when I think of pitches, that's what I think about.
Right.
But really because those are the people who we trust and we value, and that's the practice we want to go to.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah. So we are a relationship profession after all, so that
Absolutely.
makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Build a relationship.
That's right. Well, Jeff, if anybody wants to get a hold of you or check out your website, how can they do that?
They can go to thepracticeinstitute.com if they want to check out the Practice Institute. If they want to touch base with me personally, they can reach me, Jeff Zimmerman, PhD, at thepracticeinstitute.com. That's really long. If you're struggling to write that down, you also can write down DRZ, like Dr. Z, DRZ, thanks to the little boys I used to work with, and they would call me Dr. Z. DRZ at jzphd.com. My initials and degree, jzphd.com.
Wonderful.
Dr. Z at jzphd.com. And they can reach me that way. By all means, feel free if you have a little question or a big question. We like to say at the Practice Institute, there's no question too small or too large. And
Wonderful.
Certainly there aren't any stupid questions. All questions are
I agree with that.
in.
I agree with that
All
totally.
questions are in.
Yep. And Debbie, if anybody wants to get a hold of you, check out your website. How can they do that?
Our website is primrosehealingandwellness.com. And then once you're at the website, there's also a Facebook badge, and that is updated on a daily basis as well.
Great. Well, listen, thank you both for coming on the podcast episode today. It was wonderful. It's always really cool to talk to the therapist anyway, but to have two of you come on here, and you, Jeff, being the expert and taking out your time to do this, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast episode today.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I would say that Debbie's the expert.
You gave me a lot of good ideas. So no, I totally appreciate talking to you. This was great.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you, Debbie.
Okay.
Thank
thanks.
you.
All right. Thanks to Jeff and Debbie for coming on and talking about group private practice today. And boy, what a treat to have these experts come on. We've had Joe Sanok, we've had Allison Pereira, Lynn Grotsky last week, and then today Jeff Zimmerman. Boy, just think of all the wealth of knowledge and experience that these four people have had And we've had the opportunity over these past several weeks to learn from them and to benefit from their expertise. So thanks so much to them for coming on the podcast series. Today, I think that one of the things that I got out of this is the importance of us. In other words, as a group practice owner, bringing on employees who buy into the vision and promote the identity of whatever it is that the practice is promoting. So, Debbie's done such a wonderful job with this, with her group private practice, the whole concept of wellness, a holistic practice, and she has brought on people who have bought into that and just making a wonderful go of her practice so far. So really neat to see that, and I'm sure that as with her individual practice, that her group practice will be quite successful as well. So, well, if you like the show notes for today's episode, please visit my website, chrisquarto.com. And for those of you who have never listened to a podcast episode before, this is how you spell my name. CHRASQUARTO, chrisquarto.com. And if you want to listen to any of the past podcast episodes, they're all there. You can listen to them. And there are 20 of them. So I would go back and listen to those, because each time we have 4 therapists that we're interviewing, but every time I interview the therapist, there are different topics that I ask them about. So it's a real cool type of deal. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to take the summer off from doing podcast episodes. I think all of us have gotten to a point where we need a little bit of a break and to do a little bit of self-care. So we're going to start this back up in September. And what I'd like to do, and I haven't even talked to the therapist about this yet, but I think that they would be agreeable, is that for our first episode back in September, I would like to bring all 4 of them on and just to chat about how things are going and how their practices have been evolving and the challenges that they're experiencing and the successes. And wouldn't that be kind of cool to have all 4 of them on here at the same time? So I'll talk to them about that. I think they'll be open to it. And the whole plan is to do this podcast until the end of the year. What happens after that, I have no idea. But for these 4 therapists, we're going to continue talking to them, starting up again in September and going to the end of the year. So anyway, so that's the plan. Other than that, have a great rest of the week.